Fiona. Welcome back to Given to Give Ministry.
Okay, tip number one. I can say this is like the fourth or fifth take I'm doing this because I always like to be myself, and that would mean sharing my personal experiences. And tip number one, I'll definitely say that continue living in your integrity, and the right person will notice it. A godly person will notice an ungodly person. God is the revealer of all hearts. There's a verse in Kings which God mentioned that the hearts of kings are in his hands. He can turn them whichever direction he chooses to. So if the hearts of kings are in God's hands, what more the hearts of men? I'll tell you this, that when God was calling me from a worldly lifestyle, he did not just pour everything on me. I think he knew what I could and could not handle or could accept and be faithful with. So he started with, I guess, the bigger thing, and I'm calling it big because it is big. He showed me how sex before marriage was wrong, and he showed me, and I moved from that. I was like, okay, Lord, I made a covenant with him. I remember getting rebaptized and saying, Lord, I want to make this covenant with you that I want to be wholly yours, wholly thine. And God moved me from there, and I think later on he showed me how, okay, I know you've stopped having sex outside of marriage, but now I need you to not have this casual flings or friends with benefits, people who you are emotionally getting attached to, spending time with, having conversations that you're not supposed to be having with them. And I need you to stop for lack of a better word, I would call it making out with people that are not who I have not given you. And I was like, okay, all right, I can do that. And that was really by his grace. I managed to really stop that behavior. I moved from that, and God helped me to be faithful, to wait until to wait on him. And when I got into the last relationship, which I had to walk away from also because I realized it was not for me, that's not where God wanted me to be in. I had made that move in my own wisdom, despite God showing me all the signs that I needed to know prior to getting into the relationship. I learned also after the relationship that, okay, despite you getting in a relationship, even if God says, okay, this is that person for you, as long as you guys are not married, you don't have that right to physically claim that person by kissing and all these other things. So those are things I learned not in a period of 1 year. I've learned it in a space of a few years, but God has really brought me a long way. And I do believe that by being faithful, even by being faithful in the things that God is showing me, I do believe that whoever is meant for me, God would trust me with that person's heart. But if God can trust me with my own heart, to not trifle with my own heart and other people's hearts who I am casually getting involved with, how can God trust me with somebody who is supposed to be a husband to me? How can he trust me with that person's heart? And obviously, if that person was even right there coming along, I'll miss that blessing. God will probably not even give me that person. So this is how people end up missing their blessings, because they're not being faithful in the little things. You cannot be living a certain life, indulging in temporary pleasures, hoping that as soon as it's convenient, the right person will come along and you'll have this great life. No. When I was doing premarital counseling, it was part of a course. I think I mentioned to some of you, if you remember, that I studied psychology, and one of the courses we had to take was premarital counseling. And in the class we learned that behaviors that are displayed while people are dating or as they're getting to know each other when they're single, they become 10 times more or worse when they get married. So if you think that there's a certain behavior which annoys you about your husband, about your boyfriend, or somebody you intend to be with, and that is a behavior that's been there, you're not going to change the person overnight. Probability is that behavior is going to be 10 times more than it is at that time. So if you cannot control yourself and just try to be faithful to God and yourself while you're waiting for the right person, and when the right person comes along, you will still have those tendencies displayed in the marriage when you get with that person, when you get married to that person. So being walking in integrity and being faithful in the little things in the place that God has placed you is a very important step to take, and a very important, I believe, tip. So I think let's go to point number 2. By prayer and Bible study, do God's work. You cannot just stay idle and just lock yourself in the room and just say, oh, okay, I'm waiting. You need to keep busy. And we all know that an idle mind is the devil's workshop. You cannot allow room or opportunity for the devil to use whatever situation you're in to tempt you or to mislead you in any way. And the best thing to do is always to keep busy in God's work. And that can be charity work, that can be door-to-door ministry. You could maybe even enroll in medical missionary, to do a medical missionary course and see where exactly God is leading you. And I'll give you an example of Ruth. Ruth did not spend time sitting worrying, oh, I'm still young, where am I going to find my next husband, what am I going to do about children? What she did was serve. She decided to do service to her mother-in-law Naomi, and in the act of serving Naomi, which is also service to God, by serving others we're serving God, she found her husband, and guess what? He was gleaning next to her. So there's a saying that says that keep gleaning the fields and your Boaz will be right there gleaning with you. So if you are busy in the Lord's work, I'm not saying you have to look around like, oh, is this the one? No, that's not what I'm saying. It will happen, but just keep busy in God's work. That's what I'm trying to say. So point number 3. Point number 3, I would say that work on your weaknesses as revealed to you by God through His Word. If you remember in the book of Genesis chapter 17 verse 1, when God was renewing His covenant with Abraham regarding him being a father of nations, God told him this. So we see God telling Abraham to be perfect, even to walk perfectly before Him, even before fulfilling His promise. And that just kind of goes back to the first point that I made. Sometimes we think that we'll leave this straight path, we'll leave this path of not looking at other men or not looking at other women, or not flirting with other men or not flirting with other women, having these late night phone calls with other people of the opposite sex when we find the one. And yet God expects us to be faithful right now, not after the promise is given, but before the promise is given. So work on your weaknesses. I can testify that I have a friend of mine who I spoke to recently, and we're speaking regarding relationships and how long it has been since I have been in a relationship. And it was mentioned to me, it was like, oh, that's a long time since you've been single. I was like, yeah, but surprisingly it doesn't feel that long, because God has really been working on me and teaching me a lot of things, and I believe He's still teaching me. So it hasn't really been a period which has gone to waste. I have actually benefited from this time of singleness. So pray about it to God. Ask God, where are my weaknesses? Where is it that you would like me to work on as I wait? And not just for that person, but for you. Which brings me to point number 4, which is to focus on the giver and not the gift. So many times we try to focus so much on how we'll be perfect for this person who God will bring in our lives, yet forgetting that our desire to be perfect, to be holy, should be for God before it is for any human being. And the more we focus on the gift rather than the giver, it will place us in a position where we are unable to sacrifice for God when time demands or requires a sacrifice from us. If Abraham, despite the long period of waiting and trusting in God and God coming to him, I'm going to bless you, I'm going to bless you, and him believing in God, and after getting that promise, focused so much on his son Isaac than he did on God and his relationship on God, it would have been very hard for him to sacrifice his son when God told him that I need you to go sacrifice your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love. It would have been very difficult. There are so many times where we're called upon to sacrifice things. And I'm not talking about go divorce, nah, that's why I'm not even talking about that. But we would be put in a position, I believe, sometimes if we put the gift over the giver, where we compromise principles and things God has shown us in our singleness for the sake of that other person. We forget that other person is also a human being just like us, and they can make mistakes, and we end up compromising so much for that one person, which is not the right thing to do. We're called to work together to help each other, not to sacrifice principles for the sake of love, or to sacrifice the things God has shown us for the sake of peace. Point number 5 would be that God will bring the right person at the right time, and don't let your feelings push God. I can also testify to this. This is something that one of my friends who's married mentioned this point to me, and I can identify with this because as I've waited, I have met I can say 1 or 2 people who I looked at. I was like, oh my goodness, this person is just perfect, Lord. I mean, thank you. Before I even knew that the person was done for me or not, I was like, Lord, thank you. I mean, what are the odds that this person just came into my life? I mean, what an answered prayer. Only to find out that as perfect as they were, and when I say perfect, I mean that they had all the qualities I was looking for. They were Christians, they were of my faith, they were in the work, they were missionaries, they were vegetarians, they were vegans. I mean, there were people that liked, okay, now I'm giving you a list of the things I liked. Okay, let's backtrack. And these were people who I was like, as much as those people came into my lives, and I was so sure that this is it. There's no way that this person cannot be the one for me. I mean, this person, it was like God just tailor-made them for me. This is definitely the right person. But yet, over time, I realized, no, that person was not the right person for me. God did not bring that person for me. I let my feelings come in the way and cloud my judgment and start believing that that person was for me, and yet they were never for me. So just because you have certain like maybe a list or characteristics you're looking for in a person, and you happen to meet 1 or 2 people who have those qualifications, does not necessarily mean they are the one for you. It does not. You can have maybe a desire to marry a doctor or a lawyer, and you meet a lawyer who is of your faith, who has all these qualities and has it down to the point. That does not mean that that person is always for you. It does not always mean that. So don't let your feelings cloud your judgment. Always go back to God and ask Him what His will is and what His plans are for you. And like I said, at the right time, it might not be the time that you're expecting it, but at the right time, God will provide the right person for you. And yeah, from Given to Give Ministry, be blessed. Thank you so much, guys. I enjoyed this topic so much. Be blessed, and yeah, see you next time. Bye.
Thank you so much for watching the video. Please subscribe, like, comment, and share the video if you feel that it will be beneficial to somebody else. Until next time, be blessed, and thank you so much for watching.